Hi, my name is John, and this is Business Update. In this week's episode, we'll be talking about the GPU scenario or GPU update. Is it a good time to make a purchase, or should you hold off? Next, we'll be talking about the never-ending story or the never-ending saga with regards to Tesla's full self-driving software. I have my stands on it, but you know, a surprising turn has I won't say surprising, but you know, Elon Musk has made an announcement, so to speak, with regards to the full self-driving capability. We'll talk about that. And next is we'll be talking also with the recent launch of the Nintendo Switch Online with the additional features of new games for an additional fee. Is it a good purchase or is it a bad purchase? We'll talk about that. And lastly, we'll be updating regarding the situation that's happening here at Activision Blizzard with regards to the toxic work culture, with regards to how they treat their employees, and what's to be done about it. Is there a resolution, or is the problem still persisting here? So let's get started. So as mentioned, the GPU shortage, can still be felt even after a year since the pandemic started way back last year, and obviously with the supply chain, issues worldwide, production for several key components for the chip manufacturing, for whether it's smartphone, for desktops, or even laptops, or in this case for your GPU, has significantly been hampered. It's not just those industries, but as well as the automobile industry has been affected significantly, and trying to catch up with the demand and so on is problematic, and obviously it creates a imbalance between the supply and demand curve here. And obviously with the limited supply, and as many businesses would always take advantage with regards to how what I call this, as how as with any normal business, is try to jack up their corresponding prices. And it's been since early this year. I think I bought my RTX 3070, which I paid more than the MSRP, and it's still on the rise still. And for several months we've been talking about it, and here we are now, the latter part of 2021. It's almost end of the year, and has there been any improvement? Well, sad to say, we're still stuck with that issue with regards to the supply chain constraints. And the question here, uh, can we buy a latest generation of RTX, whether it's be 3060, 3070, 80, or even the sought after expensive 3090? Well, that's not the case now. What could be the reason? Is it still because of the supply chain limitations that's been you know uh, happening, or still predominant because of demands versus supply? But anyway, so let's take a closer look. So one of the main key issues that the many supply or prices is still at an exorbitantly high price. I think last time when we discussed this, the price is still unrealistic. I think some would cost even 20, 30, 50, or even 100% more than its MSRP, which is making it nearly impossible for many people who's interested in building their own PC to look for other avenues. And actually, there have been other videos who's been discussing maybe you could buy a pre-built PC where a GPU is already installed, and maybe you can get better value for that one. Well, it's a hit or miss. Obviously, those companies are trying to skim on certain aspects, whether it's the processor, or the RAM, or the storage, or even the motherboard. So, kind could be problematic. And for others, they have already bought the other components, and they're just waiting for the GPU. And obviously, if you can wait, up to this point, maybe why not wait for a few more months until it stabilizes here? But nonetheless, the issue is still persisting. The regards to how are people supposed to, what are people supposed to do with with the shortage, and the prices hasn't gone down anywhere near to where its actual MSRP is ideal. And if we were to see, with this is for both AMD graphics card as well as NVIDIA graphics card. So what could be the issue here? So one of the main issues that was mentioned, especially in this article, is the bundling, as mentioned, and obviously in the involvement of middlemen. You have retailers, distributors, and obviously uh, including them in bundles would be ideal, but obviously you're not getting the best result in your purchase here, so that you can gain access to the GPU here. Now, in my case, when I built my PC, I built it from the ground up so that I could get the best bang for buck for all the components, whether it's uh, an Asus motherboard, Intel CPU, an MSI. Is it MSI? Yeah, an MSI graphics card and so forth. So at least it gives you flexibility. Obviously, it would depend on your needs for using a desktop PC. For my case, it's both for work and for doing content for online. So, and based on what we've seen over the last few months, obviously the prices has skyrocketed in a sense. And obviously, if there are people who are still patiently waiting, will the coming holidays be any indication? Well, obviously, based on current trend, that's not going to happen anytime soon. And obviously, there are still other factors. It's not just the supply chain here. And obviously, there were mentions that even distributors were, they have to buy bulks of their GPUs bundled with motherboards, so that obviously manufacturers could sell more pieces of their components. And obviously, if you're the distributor, you're stuck with it, so you need to find a way to sell it. And obviously, trying to salvage the situation is obviously jacking up the price, which I think what happened with me, and then that was already in early January this year. So you can just imagine, if the situation persists, it's not going away anytime soon. And another issue is the crypto scenario here. Obviously, the GPUs are heavily utilized by the crypto miners so that they can mine for, with the likes of Bitcoin, Ethereum, of the likes. And obviously, one of the downsides of, the GPU demand for crypto miners is obviously it takes away from the allotted GPUs for the PC builders, so to speak here. And obviously, the mining is not only restrictive in terms of access to GPUs, but also it's very costly in terms of electric bills. That's why China has been a big major player in terms of uh, restricting or banning mining in terms of crypto mining per se. But still, it doesn't stop other people from mining themselves so that they can earn a buck here or there, which is obviously pretty significant. Otherwise, why would people pursue it in the first place? And waiting for those people to relies heavily on those GPUs, will always cause an imbalance between crypto mining versus PC building per se here. Let's see here, and you can see here. So the price for Ethereum is skyrocketing, but it's fluctuating significantly from as high as 4,369, close to 4,400 bucks, to as low as 4,000. Obviously, that's nowhere close to Bitcoin if you're investing in that platform. So the pricing will always fluctuate significantly based on demands on the cryptocurrency usage here. So if we were to look at the selling price here, so you can see here in the first column, these are the ideal selling price or MSRP for the different NVIDIA RTX 3060 all the way to 3090. So from $300 all the way to $1,500. So in our currency, 300, that's around 15,000 bucks, to as high as around 70, 80,000 bucks for 3090. But obviously, that's the ideal here. Now, obviously, selling it here in our country is pretty significant. I think when I bought my 3070, so MSRP is around 500 bucks. 25,000. I bought it almost twice already. Now, obviously, this is based on US pricing. Now, obviously, shipping overseas could, jack up the price. But anyway, comparing the MSRP to what's being sold, whether it's in eBay and other platforms, you can see that the price is, significantly higher, almost as high, uh, over 1,000 bucks of overpricing, right? Meaning there's a significant demand, and you can see across all boards, the price is as high as 50% of its retail price, and all the way to almost 120 24% of its price. So, are people willing to buy it? Obviously, if there's a demand, people are willing to pay, but is it worth it? That's the main problem. And as you can see here, there is a decrease, but it's only a slight decrease here, which is still, you know unless you bought it early this year. Right now, it's not, you know looking at it based on the numbers here, it's not looking promising. And question is, will it continue with this trend all the way to next year? And question is, how long before it normalizes, so that if people were to decide to buy, build their own PC, will the fluctuations normalize at a certain point here? But the question here is, it's still an ongoing. Actually, we even have AMD GPUs here, from the 6600 all the way to the 6900 XT. So similar here, from 300 bucks all the way to $1,000. It's still overpriced, from as low as 50% increase of their price tag, all the way to almost 120%. In particular, the most expensive AMD GPU is the Radeon 6800. So MSRP is almost 600 bucks, and you'll buy it as much as three times already, around 1,300 bucks. So it's not. Let me show you here. So you can see here, it's not doing really well. And if you look at this one, not this one, the 6800s, it's pretty expensive, and you can see that the price decrease is only marginal. So it's not worthwhile your effort to buy it right now. And question is, can you hold off? Obviously, if you need for work, then you'll have no choice but to bite the bullet, so to speak. Or you could look for other ways, as mentioned earlier, buy the GPU in bundle with a existing desktop, or in other cases, if you prefer a laptop here. But obviously, it's not the ideal solution. But if you really need it for work, then then you left to little to no choice, unless you can source it from a distributor, someone that can help you out in that case. So in terms of the GPU market, you have NVIDIA, the RTX 20 series, the 16 series, and the 10 series, which is even an older one. So from the RTX 2060 all the way to 2080 Ti, so there's still little to no change. So it's the same. Then if you look at the GTX 1650 all the way to 1660 Ti, again, even though it's cheaper, it's still expensive because of the current situation. And if you look for us far below the graphics card, you have the GTX 1630 all the way to GTX 1080 Ti. It's somewhat up at par, but obviously you're looking for better performance, so you only get basic entry level for your GPUs. And as for the AMD, you have the 5500 XT all the way to 5700 XT. It's still overpriced, as much as 100% markup price, all the way to 140% of uh, you know selling price. So in the long run, it would depend on your situation, the pressing need, and if you can hold off, if you still have an existing machine that you can use for the meantime, I think you'd hold on and stick with it until such time that it makes sense to make that purchase. Otherwise, you'll be spending a lot, and if you're willing to spend that, then go right ahead. Anyway, we'll keep you updated with our next edition, hopefully for next month, for the month of November, or for December. We'll see. Anyway, so with regard to our next issue, the Tesla, I have big issue with regards how it's marketing its full self-driving capability in terms of its risk, of its potential disaster looming, because obviously the AI capability has not yet reached to its threshold that it can fully consider itself fully autonomous in terms of driving capability, and they're nowhere near to level 5, which is designated as fully autonomous. They're only at level 2. And there have been a lot of talks, and even their engineers have been quoted saying that the technology hasn't reached to that point. But obviously Tesla is still by far ahead in terms of its capability here. And now we have Mr. Elon Musk, who admittedly uh, stated that the issues has forced Tesla to pull its latest full self-driving beta here. And obviously here's the worrying part. You're expecting getting full complement availability of features of what they're trying to sell, right? You're paying $10,000, $10,000. Imagine that, how much in peso, to avail of their technology, and it's not yet fully formed. And the concerning part here for me anyway is, you know Tesla is using those people who bought Teslas as guinea pigs to be able to learn as they use more and more of their vehicles. And you know is there any culpability if Tesla owners were to be involved in an accident due to using their softwares per se? And if I'm a motorist, I would be concerned, because obviously people tend to use what is being advertised, and advertising as a full self-driving, there's a connotation that it can actually drive itself in its entirety, not just some of it, not just partially, but in its full capability. Now it can park itself, it can drive itself, even in highways and so forth, and in street conditions, but not in its entirety, because there are still certain instances, and you can always see the videos in YouTube that's being posted, that people are always trying to test the limits of its capability, and it's not gone smoothly. And there were other reports where you've seen people in highways were sleeping behind the wheel, thinking that it's safe because it only takes just one small incident to occur. And there were videos, I think, that shows an oncoming vehicle at night. It has infrared, so you can see at night, right? There was a deer crossing the vehicle, but the problem there is the car did not recognize it, and it kept on moving and moving closer to the deer, and eventually it hit the deer. So it's not yet fully perfected, which is kind of concerning, that they're advertising as a full self-driving, which is has a whole different understanding when people read the label here. And now even Elon Musk has to state that there are issues, and they should you know do something about it. Either advertise it as a full assist. I think assist is a much better marketing uh, designation, rather than say full self-driving, because when you say self, it can drive itself, something like that. But what led to his saying that it's not maybe they have to rethink their strategy here. So you have here Elon Musk tweeting, there were some issues, well, not just some, there are a lot of issues involved with regards to their software. And that's another concerning part. You won't see this if this was sold by a regular vehicle, right? If they were to sell you an incomplete version of a vehicle that has kinks in the vehicle, whether it's hardware or software, people will not buy it. Now, obviously, people are enamored with the idea of owning their own electric vehicles, is one thing, but obviously you have to face reality that we're still decades. I don't know if we're centuries away before we can actually truly see a fully autonomous vehicle that can handle any situation. Imagine in our streets here, especially in our streets here, where it's very narrow, and you don't have to you not only have to deal with vehicles, you have to deal with motorcycles. And you can just imagine, even our public vehicles are very unruly, and they have their own set of rules. And obviously, can the AI adjust quickly? Obviously, even I, as an experienced driver, from time to time, I have to react quickly. Question is, can the AI react as quick as we are? Obviously, there's no AI yet that can come close to how human beings think or even act here. But anyway, here we have Elon Musk stating that the regression in some left turns at traffic lights found by internal QA in 10.3 fix in work, probably releasing tomorrow. Yeah, because it hasn't learned everything yet, and it needs experience, and at the expense of whom? The Tesla owners here, which I think, you know, Tesla is earning boatloads of money, yet at the expense. Who takes the burden? Will Tesla be culpable here if there were an accident because of that feature? Eh, And then he goes on to say here, seeing some issues with the 10.3, so rolling back to 10.2 temporarily. And then he goes on to say, please note this is to be expected with beta software. So it's a trial and error, so to speak. Oh, I never like the idea. You're the guinea pig here. Why not test it for yourself? If they need guinea pigs, it is impossible to test all hardware configuration in all conditions with internal QA, hence public beta. Yeah, that draws a red flag if you think about it, because if it hasn't considered all possible scenarios, obviously simulation can only do so much, but at the end of the day, you still need actual experience, right? First-hand experience to be able to learn and learn from its mistakes. But the question is, what type of mistakes will it encounter? Will it be fatal for those passengers or people behind the wheel? Which, should you take it? Logic dictates, you wouldn't, because imagine this: in an airplane, when you ride an airplane to travel from one place to another, imagine, would you rely on the autopilot features to do everything from taking off to flying over thousands of feet to landing and so forth? You still need the pilot, right? You never see an airplane advertising it could drive itself, because if they were to do, no one would ride it anymore. Same goes here for a Tesla vehicle here. And obviously, it's not just Tesla that I'm talking about, but all all EV vehicles that has self-driving capability here. And obviously, that's a noble goal for the future, but has it have we reached that point? Imagine how long before the airplane was developed for commercial use, from the time the Wright brothers flew successfully for however long. How long before they were able to, or not they, but how long before the airplane was conceived to being able to market it as a commercial transportation here. Obviously, we haven't come even close to that reality for electric vehicles here. Anyway, so let's take a closer look. So as you can see here, so they have the full self-driving, or the FSD that they're calling here. So they have new features, which I think is tremendous what they're trying to do here, but I think it's a bit ambitious for my sense. Now, saying all of those things to give people something to look forward to, like how they're marketing the Tesla Cybertruck, which is good. But expectation is different from reality, right? And obviously, they made better product compared to other car manufacturers in that aspects. But obviously, it's not yet perfected, which is, I think, everyone needs to temper their expectation here. As you can see here, the full self-driving should allow drivers to change vehicles' behavior from rolling stops, lane changes, following distance, and more. And then they also improve creeping speed, reduced false slowdowns, improve crossing object velocity estimation, and a lot more. And obviously, the concern here uh, goes on if you were to look closely here. And even according to Elon Musk, he goes on to say that it is to be expected with the beta software, but at what cost, right? We've been hearing reports that the near misses here, or because of the incident here. And then obviously they have the Tesla because other issues with the battery issues. Can they guarantee 100% that it won't catch flame? Similar to, we can now confidently drive a vehicle even if it's in a motor accident. Little to no chance of catching fire unless it hits the fuel tank, but it's a rarity, not a common occurrence. But obviously with a battery powered vehicle, there's a high likelihood, obviously with the chemicals mixing in, catching flame is a recipe for the disaster of biblical proportion here. And obviously they still need to make improvements so that it can be roadworthy in a sense, and gives more people confidence at the end of the day. Obviously if it's for the betterment of mankind to own an electric vehicle, I'm all for it. Obviously the issue here is the safety aspect. It's not just the users per se, if they're qualified to own a Tesla vehicle, like what Tesla is doing here, that to be able to use those features, you have to have this safe. I think I saw this interview where MKBHD was being interviewed. I think he was able to get the necessary score to be able to be eligible for the FSD program here. But should it work the other way also? Is the car safe enough that if you were to test all of its features that it's selling, and it is selling those features, and that's the only reason that people are interested in. Otherwise, it you know on its own, will it get the necessary popularity, demand, if those features were not included, if it's just a regular electric vehicle here. And even the article mentions the name itself is misleading, the autopilot, as full self-driving does not offer full self-driving at all, which is has been my whole point the whole time. And they're calling it, they should be called advanced driver assistance. Actually, instead of full self-driving, full self-assistance. I think that's a better accurate representation of what they're offering here. And until such a time they rephrases that, it's going to be dangerous for motorists. It's not just that the owners of Tesla vehicles, but also for other vehicles that that will be involved in that accident. So I may not own a Tesla, but if an irresponsible driver, meaning sleeping on while on the road, or not being attentive, and then you have Tesla, whose responsibility of ensuring that what they market is 100% safe, not just the hardware part but also the software part. It's an ongoing debate. Now obviously if people continues to buy their product, then you cannot fault for Tesla for doing its job, or doing a great job at marketing its product. But obviously people need to be responsible enough to understand that the risk is unrealistic here. You can just imagine when cars were invented way back in the 1900s, and there were no seat belts, no side mirrors, no rear view mirrors. How dangerous were cars at the time? So that when even before the invention of airbags, you could just imagine the disaster looming, because if you drive fast enough and there's no safety net for the drivers and even for other motorists, could cause a lot of deaths. And that's why when the rise of accidents or deaths occurred at the time, they implemented safety measures, or in safety safety belts were required. And then improving technology is in another. But obviously with software, can be sometimes iffy and unreliable, because there are always flaws in softwares. That's why I tend to rely more on hardware products that can be used over and over, and I don't have to pay a subscription fee for that one. And that's what Tesla is leveraging here. Anyway, we'll see what happens here. Will they make a remarkable change here or improvement? We'll see. Anyway, going from Tesla, going now to Nintendo, which is another company, for all its uh, benefits of offering the Switch, right? A portable gaming device. Well, they haven't released a top tier AAA game recently, and I'm looking forward for the Zelda sequel here, or a prequel of sorts. But anyway, they're trying to offer for the meantime, selling you retro games in their online Switch games, which is should look exciting, because their online Switch games are paltry at best, and charging you for a fee. I tried it for a year, but it didn't make sense. But anyway, there were excitement with people who are Switch owners, and there are a lot of Switch owners, right? And guess what Nintendo did? So they offered more retro games, but tried to charge you more which I don't see the point, because unless they are triple A top tier games that that's currently being played by active gamers, then it would make sense. But still, charging twice the amount, I don't see the point. And the sad part is, when people who bought those subscription tried to play those games, they did not even fix the flaws. They just only uh, what do you call this? They just ported those retro games in those older consoles to the Switch. They did not even try to improve on it. So there were a lot of lags, bugs with the in terms of the gameplay. So it's not an enjoyable experience. So thinking that you would play those retro games in your Switch consoles would be tremendous, right? That's why it created a unintended consequence because of the terrible how Nintendo protected, not necessarily protected, but how it squandered the opportunity to gain a strong following, because there is a strong following for Nintendo lovers. I've owned a Super Famicom way back in the 90s, to the SNES. What else? Well, I skipped the Wii console, but all the way now to the Nintendo Switch. And what created was the modding community, wherein if you want to play retro games, it would be much better to just download an emulator of sorts to play those retro, which is playing Mario games. One of my favorite is Super Mario 3, right? So you can just imagine, if Nintendo knew how valuable their retro games were, they should have strategized and ensured that you know gameplay would be top notch. I mean, we're not expecting top notch graphics. I mean, obviously an improvement in graphics would be nice, similar to how Rockstar is trying to milk for every cent that they have in their retro the trilogy that they recently launched for the GTA 3, Vice City, and San Andreas, right? But obviously, going against the modding community is not ideal. But anyway, so the issue that's persisting is, the actual experience is not that great, and obviously charging you for uh, double the amount is a bit too steep for just a few extra games, right? It's not as if you have the entire catalog of all their retro games and expecting people to shell out for those money. Now, obviously, they're offering N64 games, which is nice. But again, it's just novelty, and should people pay for that extra bunch? Again, if you're looking for value, you just look at the best is you have the Xbox Game Pass, which offers $15 a month for all of their catalog, current and past and future releases. And you can also look at Sony. It's even better. I mean, even though they only offer two games, Game Plus games every month, it's still better than none, right? And obviously, you can download their catalog all the way in the past if you own the PlayStation Plus subscription here. So is it enough for you to justify that extra purchase here? I think from $20 to $50 for individual membership, and then from $40 from family to $80, which is twice the amount. Is it twice the experience? Twice the I don't know, but let's see. So they're offering Super Mario 64. You have Star Fox 64, Zelda of Ocarina of Time. You can see here there are some games that obviously you'd like to play it again, but for that extra bucks here, I could have bought a new triple A games, or something else, and not look for this one. And you can see here that if you look at the screen here, the comparison between the Zelda Ocarina in the left side, which is played in the Wii U console, and on the Switch. So you can see, is it any better? And in terms of graphic fidelity, it's not the most enticing here, and you're trying to entice those consumers to pay up more, right? And I don't know if it's going to convince anyone soon. And obviously, the demand for nostalgic experience is there if Nintendo could only just capitalize on that reality, and not just milk for every cent for every user. And caution for Nintendo here, even though they're crossing the threshold of being one of the best-selling consoles of all time, reaching more than 100 already, or they're close to 100. A competitor is up on the horizon, and with the near release of the Steam's Valve Steam Deck is coming up real soon, and if it's anywhere close as it's advertised, then Nintendo, your notice, and with your recent launch of your OLED screen improvement, it's not enough to convince buyers to upgrade their Switch. And if you're just focusing on new consumers, again, it always goes back to the catalog of games here. Now, obviously, one thing that the Nintendo has done a better job in their Switch era is the porting of several games into the Switch console, which, obviously, in my case, I think I downloaded Hollow Knight twice, one for my PlayStation, then another in the Switch. Then uh, the Final Fantasy retro game, I bought it. I bought twice. The Final Fantasy 7 and then Final Fantasy 10. I bought it in the Switch because so I could play it, at my leisure if I have time, or if I decide to play it again. But anyway, so that gives you the flexibility. Now, if Nintendo doesn't smart up quickly, and if Steam is able to deliver its intended, or even just comes close to its capability of being able to play PC games, I think it would significantly hamper no matter what Nintendo does in the future, regardless if they offer a Nintendo Switch Pro like they should have done in the first place. Then it's going to cut on their revenue here. But the question here is, what will Nintendo do? Will they continue with the bad library of games in the online? Actually, it's not a good value if you look at it. But if people are still paying for it, then will Nintendo learn from anything from it? We'll see. Lastly, we were talking about the issue that is, it's with Activision's Blizzard's toxic work culture in terms of how they treat their employees, in particular female employees, and has it made any headway here? And according to the article here, that the CEO, Bobby Kotick, is taking a pay cut to end its arbitration. But the question here is, did it solve one of its main problems? Did it address the many concerns of its employees? And obviously, at the end of the day, no matter what the CEO does, if it doesn't, address the key issue, then taking a pay cut doesn't mean squat, right? So let's take a closer look. Or was it? There you go. So according to the article, the company is going to penalize the CEO by cutting his compensation until goals are met. But the question is the CEO culpable because of the work, like the toxic culture that it has generated? Obviously, the CEO is always the leader that everyone follows. So if there's anything wrong within the company, obviously everyone, the CEO should be held culpable here. Question is, how far does the responsibility go? Obviously, there are board of directors that has a say on it. Anyway, according to the CEO, there was a letter sent updating employees on the further steps that he and the company will take to change its image in the wake of the multiple sexual harassment, which is, that's a big issue, and discrimination lawsuits. So, question is, what will the company do here? And stating here that he will only earn $62,000 per year and cut his paycheck of compensation pay of a little over 150 million. But the question is, did it address their concerns? Because if cutting the paycheck means nothing, then they didn't address the issues here. So let's see here. So the main issue here, as you can see, the demand the demand is as follows, and they're looking for it to be acknowledged and to be addressed, right? So let's take a look here. So first is an end of arbitration clauses in all employees' contracts. And current and future arbitration clauses protect abusers and limit the ability of victims to seek restitution. Now, obviously, the goal here is to protect the interest of the company per se, right? And obviously, sometimes to the detriment of employees. Now, obviously, there should be a compromise between what shouldn't be allowed to be discussed in public, but also protect the interest of employees here. But was it addressed? Well, obviously, based on what the actions the CEO did, well, it it, it did little to no changes here. Now let's look at the second one here. The adoption of recruiting, interviewing, hiring, and promotion policies designed to improve representation among employees of all levels, agreed upon by employees in a company-wide diversity, equity, inclusion organization. Now, I have no problem with no, what do you call this? Uh, Recruitment of great employees. Now, inclusion of all levels. I mean, equal opportunity is what I'm for, but equal outcome is a different issue altogether. Now, obviously, you want to get the best people here, and obviously, having a terrible work-like culture will negate that and discourage people from working for your company and getting the best employees here. And you can see the fallout. If employees start leaving here in droves, especially the best ones, obviously the smart ones, if they know what's good for them, they look for a different company that has a better culture here. And obviously transparency is another one. So obviously understanding what are the criteria for hiring, firing people, and so forth is important. Again, communication with with your employees is important here, so that there will be no perceived biases or mistreatment, and so to speak. And then number three, they have publication of data on relative compensation, including equity grants and profit sharing, promotion rates, and salary ranges of employees of all genders and ethnicities at the company. So obviously the point here is to be more transparent here, and if they have employee guidelines as to how they hire, promote, provide compensation packages, should be clearly stated, and it should be equal. If you reach a certain threshold, that's why you're looking for equal opportunity, but obviously it depends on your performance. If you have a proven track of exemplary performance, then you should be handsomely rewarded. It should be just because you're a male or female, one gender has a higher salary over the other. Obviously that creates an equal opportunity, so to speak, here, and we want everyone given the best chance regardless of gender or race. And finally, empower a company-wide diverse. Now, I don't know about that one. Just for the sake of having equal opportunity means there should be equality in all levels. Obviously, you want to get the best people. Now, it doesn't matter if it's all male-led individual or female or a mix. At the end of the day, you want to get the best people to do the best job that they can. And obviously, again, it goes back to the main concepts of transparency and communication. And I think in terms of Activision's CEO has not done a better job or a great job at that on meeting its requirement, and obviously their actions is totally opposite of what they're looking for, better dialogues per se. And until that changes, I think the problems that Activision is dealing, I think we're still waiting on with regards what the verdict is. What's the verdict with regards to the government's when they looked into the situation here? Is there merit of the cases that's being brought upon to the company, or is it just hogwash here, or is it just employees who are not happy and they're trying to put the company into shame and so forth? So at the end of the day, if it's put into light with the courts to decide, so to make it more official here, well, hopefully they can be resolved. Obviously, no one wants to work in a company that is has a terrible work-life culture here, and obviously we want to have an ideal working environment, especially whether it's face to face or even online. So you could just imagine the difficulty of having camaraderie and harmony, cooperation, and in this difficult time. Anyway, I'll keep everyone updated with those things. If there's any changes, hopefully improvements for the better. Anyway, that concludes our discussion for this week. Thank you again for watching. Come back again on Wednesday for more business update. And if you enjoy these types of video, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. As always, I'll see you in the next one. Take care.